you so much for joining us here at SU.
Thank you.
And I want to just get right into it. Simply put, why are you running for re-election on the city council?
Well, I love Salisbury. My family lives here. My grandparents had a house where one of your dorms is. I went to school at Carruthers. I love Salisbury, and I've been able to make really significant changes and make great progress, and I want to continue to do that.
And if re-elected, what will be the first thing on the agenda?
The first thing on my agenda, well, we've got some things that are moving along right now. One is to deal with properties that are habitually problematic. Another big thing is bringing good paying jobs to the city, because we can build all of the affordable housing in the world, but if we don't have good jobs, we'll never break the cycle of poverty. So we really need to think innovatively about what we need to do to position Salisbury to be a competitive choice as we come out of this recession, and to be able to bring probably tech sector jobs, especially since we have 2 universities and 2 colleges here, and the tech sector is really hurting for qualified employees. I think there's a huge opportunity there as one example.
What do you see as, or what do you think is the biggest difference between you and your opponent?
Well, certainly my experience and my track record, because if you look at my track record, you'll see that I do have a track record for getting things done, for innovation. You've got the new River's Edge artisan housing, which, you know, that building has sat empty for a while, and it's a great solution because it will create affordable artisan housing, a 3-building complex, and 10 units will be set aside for people with disabilities, which is an area that we had really fallen behind in affordable housing. The developer will have a partnership with the Epilepsy Association, so it's starting to do that networking, and that building will serve as a gateway to our arts and entertainment district. So knowing everyone involved and being able to do the networking to get that done was significant. Another one that especially your viewers would probably care a lot about is the recent salary restructuring for the police department, because you're probably aware that our salaries for Salisbury Police Department officers were much, much lower than surrounding agencies, and we were constantly losing officers. And so what that meant was we have a young force, but we were down 8 officers and scheduled to lose 4 more. Down 2 dispatchers. We were having to take officers off the road to answer the phones. And as soon as we fixed that salary structure, which I was instrumental in bringing all of the parties together and getting that done, once we fixed that, 2 officers who had left because of pay came back pretty much immediately. And according to the state's attorney, one of those officers and his knowledge was critical in making key arrests in the case of the murder in the Princeton Homes neighborhood. And those same suspects were wanted in conjunction with robbing some of your students at gunpoint, I think a week or so before. Another was the tenant protection bill. I have been wanting tenant protections for 8 years since I was first elected. And it took that long to get a council who was willing to pass that, and a mayor who, you know, was willing to embrace it as well. And so now we have a bill that requires all landlords to include a tenant's bill of rights with their leases, so that tenants know what their rights are as far as getting their security deposits back, having, you know, safe, habitable, code-compliant housing. So I think that I have a great working knowledge of the charter and the code, because you have to know those things to do the job. Plus, I'm exposed to things like the Innovation Summit that I told you about that let me know what's working really well in communities all across the country. So I have the base of local knowledge combined with a much, much larger view of how to get great things done.
You talked about your track record a little bit, and I want to go into something that you're campaigning about, and that's about the money that you save taxpayers. Can you talk to us a little bit about that?
Yes, I'm known for having a pretty sharp pencil. And what people need to remember is that every time we raise taxes, we, you know, put somebody else out of their house, we put another small business under, because especially in this economy, people are really struggling, and it's important that we remember and have reverence for how hard people work for the tax dollars that they pay. And so, for instance, this year, a pretty significant tax increase was proposed. And it was my work on the budget. The council had been trying to figure out where things had changed that were driving this tax increase. And it was my work on the budget that discovered some pretty substantially underreported revenues. And when we fixed those and put the revenues more on track, and we were very conservative about that, we were still able to fund virtually all of the programs that the mayor wanted and keep the taxpayers from having a tax increase. So that was a really big one. Another one is the savings, and that comes both from my attention to detail and my business experience. For instance, the city finally bid its insurance. Who doesn't price their insurance from time to time to make sure that they're getting the best deal? That saved us a significant amount of money. Also, you know, a city has debt. And so we refinanced the debt, which I had asked and pushed for over the years. We refinanced the debt at a time when interest rates were at an all-time low. That saved a lot of money. And then we had a grant to consider to fund 12 additional firefighters for a 2-year period. And as I looked at it, partly because of my knowledge of what the benefits cost the city because of the amount of time that I've served, I found a $400,000 error. And I brought it to the administration's attention, and it was able to be rectified before we signed off on the grant. So the grantor, which was the state, as I recall, although it might have been the federal government, it doesn't really matter. But they were willing to go ahead and add that $400,000 to the amount that the city was being provided in the form of the grant. And if that hadn't happened, the taxpayers in compliance with the grant conditions would have been responsible for that money. So the total is about $1 million this year in savings in addition to preventing a tax increase.
I want you to talk a little bit about this perception that the council, as a council, would know. When in fact, you all approve about 90% of what comes before you.
We have, and you know, I think that is driven by the people who don't want Salisbury doing things in a new way. You know, I heard just before the last campaign, somebody who really didn't want to see me elected, who I think benefits from the suffering of the city, say, it doesn't matter if it's true or not. If we say it enough times, people will believe it, and that is what will win the day. So I think that you're seeing some of that here. And, you know, the times that I have said no have been to things like tax increases. So when you look at the facts, which is, I think, 70 out of 80 ordinances or 80 out of 90 ordinances and 190 out of 200 resolutions that we've adopted, we usually do say yes. And it's often, you know, sometimes it's a 3-2 vote, sometimes it's a 4-1 vote, sometimes it's a unanimous vote. But I think that if you believe in democracy, you understand and respect the difference of opinion that gives you a 3-2 vote or a unanimous vote or a 4-1 vote. I'm happy to say that things like the police salary increases were unanimous. And that's not something that you read in the paper, and it's not really the story that typically gets told to the public. And people ask me about that sometimes, and I tell them, well, I can spend my time with my sharp pencil and with my thoughts on my work, doing my work, benefiting the people who have trusted me to serve them, or I can hold a press conference or be constantly battling the press that isn't completely accurate. And, you know, I wasn't elected to do that. I was elected to work for you, so I spend my time working for you, and, you know, the press is going to do what the press is going to do. So hopefully in an election cycle, the people will really take a good look at the record, and it's out there. You know, you can look at my website, Campbell for Salisbury and .com and see what's been done, and I think that you'll see that I've spent my time working for you instead of debating foolishness.
We keep hearing about whether it be forums or debates about the revitalization of downtown.
Right.
What are your plans for the revitalization of the area? What needs to take place to make progress there?
Well, you know, it's not just the revitalization of downtown. All of Salisbury needs to prosper, and we need to be looking at what it takes to keep the businesses that we already have and the jobs that we already have here, and to also bring more. I mean, for one thing, when a business goes to the city for whatever they need, they should feel like they just checked into a five-star hotel. As far as downtown itself, downtown proper, I mean, certainly a viable downtown area is going to make the people who live here feel better about living in the city. Third Friday is something that's really, really enjoyed by a group of people, and shows that if you have something downtown that people enjoy, that they'll come. But there are smart ways to get this done, and the smart way to get this done is not by giving our parking lots away, for instance, which are valuable city property.